The numbers from the latest James Gunn headed DCU effort Supergirl are in, and it doesn't look good for neither the film nor the franchise. According to Discussing Film, it's a quote, Supergirl opens with 38 million domestically and is the lowest opening weekend than Mobius and the Marvels. IGN here calls it a crash landing in theaters with a 68 million opening weekend at the global box office. And Culture Crave gives context to this, with Supergirl opening at 68 million at the global box office and domestic was lower than even The Flash, Mobius, and the Marvels. They also say that the production budget for this film was 170 million, meaning that they lost over $100,000 at least on the opening weekend. Now, this film is going to receive a lot of competition in the upcoming weeks, with Minions and Monsters and Toy Story 5 already out. Now, several reviewers, both mainstream and anti-establishment, had said that this film did not meet expectations. Variety being one of the more focused on ones, saying that Millie Alcock takes charge in a dystopian superhero movie so flat it's super horrendous. It's got a terrible script and a punk rock attitude of corporate pretension. IGN, the one that's infamous for giving Mixtape a 10 out of 10, giving this one an okay, saying Supergirl borrows from the best, but Millie Alcock's great take on Kara Zor-El gets lost in the spare parts from other movies used to resemble her story. And at the time of recording this video, the film is currently set at 55 on the tomato meter and 76 on the popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes, with the tomato meter being the critics review and the 76 being the, however, take the popcorn meter with a grain of salt, seeing as how fans on both sides of the coin might be at war with each other on the normal when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes. Some of the top critics, however, on Rotten Tomatoes that reviewed Supergirl, including David Sims at The Atlantic, saying, quote, Supergirl, the character, still has a lot going for her, presumably including the future in the DC universe. Supergirl, the film, meanwhile, is only on mildly diverting whiff. And Dennis Stevens at Slate.com saying, despite an appealing rough-edged title character played with scrappy aplomb by Millie Alcock, this second installment in what DC is positioning as an unfolding multi-character franchise defaults to too many of the cliches of superhero cinema at its worst. The film, which is directed by Craig Gillespie and is based on the Tom King authored graphic novel Woman of Tomorrow, did not get any favors from Millie Alcock when she said to Variety, quote, I guess women know that this is just how it's always been, unfortunately, and it's from a lot of people whose profiles have no photo, who are burner accounts or someone's name and then data for a Christian, which is hilarious to me, but I mean, whose opinion do you really care about? If you're pissing the right kind of people off, you're doing okay. Speaking in response to some of the vitriol that she had received, and of course we do not condone vitriolic comments or any kind of threats toward anybody on this channel. However, it is imperative that we point this out, because this and other comments were part of why a lot of the YouTube critics had begun to cover this extensively, and in the end, even they did not appreciate the Supergirl film. Critical Drinker had called it a total cinematic calamity. Neurotic also chimed in saying that Supergirl is abysmal, the DCU is dead. Jezebel also chimes in with her own video saying, I hate this movie with every fiber of my being. Don't mince words, say how you really feel, girl. And more to the point, that even women did not enjoy this film. Snarky J calls it hot garbage, and Emily Butler calls it the girl boss from hell. And even usual comic book movie defenders like Eric Debunks, known for his critical reception of Critical Drinker and neurotic type videos, could not defend it. On this Eric's Reloaded channel, he says, quote, Supergirl made me sad, giving it a 5 out of 10. However, one of the most publicized critic reactions was Angry Joe after he was clamoring for people to buy tickets for Supergirl in order to support further comic book movies. However, after criticizing Neurotic and Critical Drinker of being quote-unquote grifting, a common reaction to some of those particular reviewers, he later posted this particular video saying that it was a super mess. And then later in a subsequent viewing, he decided that he did not like the film even more so, which led the former Channel Awesome creator to post this video saying of the 10 reasons he hates the Supergirl movie after a subsequent viewing. This had several other YouTubers calling him out, saying that he was being a shill for Supergirl and not understanding why several people would not appreciate such a film. The Supergirl and Superman film is slated to be prerequisites to the upcoming film Superman Man of Tomorrow, which is going to be written and directed by James Gunn himself. Although if you to take what culture said about the DCU being in trouble into account, this may not be set in stone quite yet, because right now it just seems like people believe that James Gunn is right now on the director hot seat, knowing how the film's trajectory might end given the aforementioned competition that it's going to receive coming down the road. Okay, so the first thing I need to get to about this particular story is we had a feeling that this movie was not going to do as well as expected. The projections went down and kept going down as far as how much it was going to make, and there were all these pre-orders and stuff like that, which didn't really do that well as far as moving the needle in the direction they needed to go in. For the record, too, I don't think Millie Alcock's comments and stuff like that are the only reason why this failed, at least in the first week. We don't know how it's going to do subsequent weeks, but it doesn't look good from the grand scheme of things. And you can't really blame this on those so-called chuds or anybody like that, because if you have numbers that are that low, then it doesn't seem like anybody really came to see it outside of people who bought the ticket before the movie even came out, or the reviews even came out, or people that wanted to legitimately buy a ticket in order to review this film so they could tell other people whether or not it was good or not. And I think other people were starting to get a little bit wise to people saying, oh, go see the film to see if it's good or not. Remember, if you buy a ticket to see a film to see if you like it or not, you're already rewarding the studio that made that film. After you buy the ticket, they don't care what your opinion is on that film. You've already rewarded them. You already bought the ticket. That's why we have reviewers. That's why we have people who review film. Because if a person who you trust goes and reviews a film and they say it's hot garbage, guess what? You're not going to want to reward them for their incompetence. That's why we have that sort of checks and balances. And for them, people say, oh, don't trust that person, don't trust this person, go see the film for yourself. I don't want to reward somebody my money that I worked hard for and find out that I hated the film, or I hated the game, or I wasted my time and precious money. That's money that I can go spend on something else, or reward another film that values my time, values my investment, values my money, wants to make sure that I'm left rewarded when I walk out of the theater or I finish the game. That's why we have reviewers. That's why we go on word of mouth. We go on that sort of thing, because I don't want to reward anybody who doesn't value my time or money. And that includes a studio. And when you have this many people saying and having a general consensus that this is not a good film, then what are we supposed to think? What are we supposed to believe? That, oh, they're all wrong? They're all drinking from the same Kool-Aid jug? Is that what you want us to believe? Because I don't think that's the case. I don't think that is going to be the case at all. I think the majority of people, if they're saying, hey, there's something wrong with this film, and even Angry Joe, who was defending people wanting to go see the film at first, is now backpedaling on that. And I'll get to that in a minute. If even he's backpedaling on that, then you have to think that maybe something in the actual film is incorrect or wrong or lackluster, and it has nothing to do with whether or not somebody is a chud or not. And I'll get to that in a minute too. But from the outset, even though this was not a quote-unquote James Gunn directed film, he was and is the head of the DCU. This is the Gunverse. He has the final say. He has the final say on what happens here. So yeah, he's going to have his fingerprints on this. And even though it's going to be a different director, unless James Gunn is completely out of the writing room, then he has his paws on it. I'm sorry, he does. And it shows that it has his trademarks all over it. And if you see a trailer and you see the same tropes that he uses all the time, you're going to think either they don't know how to write an original thing, or he has his fingerprints on it. And it's the same thing he's done every single time, at least lately. I mean, this is the same guy who made Slither as one of his first mainstream films. What's happened to him? He made Guardians of the Galaxy. It was a big hit, and all of a sudden now he wants to create the same film over and over again. And maybe it works every once in a while, but it doesn't work in these kinds of heavy doses. And it's starting to get exposed with this projection that we're seeing that it's going to finish up being worse than two films that have no business being at the top of anything. Marvel's, maybe you can make a case for it. Morbius? No, you can't make a case for that. And the only reason you can make a case for Marvel's is because one of the actresses knew what they were talking about and was actually pretty nice, reportedly. But Morbius, headed by Jared Leto, and we all know the stories that he's been involved in, and you're saying the opening week for this was worse than that? No, I don't think think it's just these so-called chuds. And we've been hearing this back and forth. Let me tell you something. First of all, again, as I said, if so many people are agreeing with people like Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic and Chester Bell, they can't all be wrong. Now, some people might have been a lot harsher toward this film than other people might have been. But you know what? They have the right to think that. They have the right to tell you that. And maybe instead of blaming them for, oh, well, they poisoned the well, why don't you go to these studios and tell them, why can't they come up with an original idea? Why can't they value your time and money more than what they're currently doing? And why can't they not value LGBTQ plus people or people of color or female-led projects? Because, well, I agree, Millie Alcock had not as much effect about this as many people might have thought she did. Her words did not help. Because imagine if you were a minority, a person of color, or LGBTQ plus person, and you're hearing that from a company, if you want our support, we'll give you all the support we can give you as long as you buy the tickets to the icons and the movies we've chosen to be the centerpieces for your identity. We have chosen a few things for you, and if you do like them, we will support you, but if you do not, you're going to be labeled a pick me or whatever other label we can stick to you because you didn't support the ones we chose for you. And these people should be ashamed of themselves for doing that, because the first thing that an LGBTQ plus person would want, or any person of color or any sort of marginalized group would not want, is for somebody to tell them what they are or are not allowed to like, or who they should choose to be their icons, or who they look up to, because they're still human beings as well. They also have free thought, and they don't have to like what you choose as their icons. You shouldn't be choosing for them anyway, and you shouldn't put the onus on them to say, if you don't like this, if you don't go to this, we're not going to make any more for you because you're going to show us that you actually don't want this kind of content. Well, no, we don't want the content you force feed to us. And the other thing that I think people are getting upset about and tired of, and this is showing it, I believe this is showing that a great deal right now, is this anti-grift YouTubing scene that's been taking effect. I think this is showing how fragile it actually is, because as much as people are agreeing that this film is lackluster, that has still not stopped these anti-grift YouTubers from trying to get their grift going. And you know what I'm talking about. The people who every time Critical Drinker so much as breathes, we have to hear 10 videos about it. And it happened again with his viewpoint about Supergirl, about his review. You want to know the reason why he puts up so many videos about Supergirl? Because outlets like The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and Deadline keep putting out content about it. We keep seeing new trailers. Is he not supposed to comment about them? Is he not supposed to report on them and give his thoughts? I'm pretty sure a lot of other YouTubers have done just that. And I think Eric July put out a terrific video explaining this, but I think we need to go a little bit further than that. And I don't know if I would have the stones to do it just yet, but maybe we need to have them call certain people out by name now, because this is just showing just how fragile that particular mindset is. That every time some of these channels are trying to tell us what they really think, we have other channels who are trying to say, oh, well, they're lying, they're just being chuds, they're just grifting off of you. Or maybe we are all in agreement that this film was not great, and we don't want to reward their laziness with our money or our time. And maybe we trust Critical Drinker and Neurotic a lot more than we trust some of these other people like Grace Randolph, who also did not view this favorably, or Variety or Hollywood Reporter, or those mainstream outlets. When you ask them to be a little bit more in tune with what our habits are and not try to cater to those studios just so they can get more access. I mean, I saw a video over the weekend by one of these anti-grift channels trying to call out Critical Drinker because he was saying that Tomb Raider was better than you remember. That's an opinion he has. Or that he didn't include certain quote-unquote right-wing stars on his Crash and Burn series. I mean, I didn't know that Steven Seagal or Ezra Miller were left-wing. That's news to me. And didn't James Gordon crash and burn? Did he not do that? And that's far from the only claim that these channels have taken against those particular YouTubers. If you don't like a YouTuber, you can simply not watch them, but don't blame them for the failures of these films. Because no one is saying that we want female-led movies to go away. No one's saying that. But it's not enough now that you just put in a female character and call it a day. You have to give more care and more respect than what you gave in this film. And I'm sorry to say Supergirl was was not the first character I would have thought you would do for a female-led superhero movie. If you want to do a female-led superhero movie in the DC universe, you fix whatever the crap they did to Wonder Woman in those 2 films, and you make a proper Wonder Woman film, because she is the most recognizable female superhero, not only in DC, but in superhero comic book worlds altogether. She's the most recognizable. Everybody would love to see Wonder Woman get a proper film that actually has good care done to it. But I don't think James Gunn has the capacity to do that, because look what happened with Supergirl. He based it loosely off of a Tom King graphic novel, and he couldn't even get that right. And yes, it is his fault, because he's the one that let these other 2 people, the writer and the director, do what they did, and he was overseeing it. So yeah, the buck stops with him. I don't care what anybody says about, oh, he didn't direct it, he didn't write it. Yeah, but he's the head of the DCU. It's his universe. He has the final say, and that's because Warner Brothers Discovery, before they got sold off, gave the reins to him. What do you want us to think? And finally, for the record, yes, we are allowed to criticize James Gunn. We are allowed to criticize Disney. Stop thinking we're not. James Gunn deserves all the blame, and no amount of anti-grift YouTubers are going to tell us any different or make us think any different, because we generally think, not because we're grifting, because we're not to begin with, not because, oh, we hate women or we hate this or that. No, it's because James Gunn is not doing a good job. This kind of stuff only is easily digestible in small doses, and stuff like this is exposing how unoriginal he is when he is the head of something. He's not fit to be the head of this. I'm sorry, he just isn't. He might be a good director as long as you take him in small doses every once in a while. There's a reason why Guardians of the Galaxy, those films were big hits, but yet this is not, because they can't handle him constantly. He is not a good fit to lead this thing, and only telling us that we're istifos because we don't agree that he is the savior of the DCU is going to help your cause. It's just going to show us how right we are. And this is while the DCEU that was on the CW for a while did really well, because they understood the source material, even though they didn't have the budget that these James Gunn films and what came before with the Snyderverse. So that's another thing that gets under my skin. How many people are hating the Snyderverse right now as if it did anything to you? But those shows actually did well. Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, that show with Melissa Benoist, hope I'm pronouncing her name right, those were doing pretty well on the CW. One, you do it like that, but with a bigger budget. I mean, I understand they weren't perfect, but it's miles better than what we have right now. That show, the Supergirl show, should have shown you that there is room for this character to exist, but not in this frame, and definitely not with James Gunn as the head of the entire DCU. Right now, it doesn't work. Either he needs to understand that his tropes and his normal mannerisms don't work when he has to have his hands on everything, it seems, or we need to find someone who will value a person's time and money and investment in these characters. And it would help if the people who are claiming that people like Critical Drinker and people like him are just being instifos because they dare to criticize James Gunn or a female-led film would instead ask for these major production studios to value our time a little bit more. And as I said, even if Angry Joe is backpedaling from his viewpoints about this, then you gotta think there's something going on. And I don't know what is going on with Angry Joe anymore. I remember when he used to be with Channel Awesome and he exited stage left at the drop of that Not So Awesome document, and I'm not sure if he even heard anything that anybody has said about that document since then. It's made out of Swiss cheese. Everybody knows what my feelings are about Alison Pregler and how she's conducted herself in recent years. I don't want to get too much in the weeds about that because it is a dead horse that's being beaten again, but I remember when he shared the same mindset that the late and great John Total Biscuit Bain did. He used to be friends with him. I remember watching him back when he was good friends with him up until his death, and how in tune he is with the greed of the video game industry. We've talked about EA constantly, even though EA never listens to anything we say. Maybe check the people he follows on X, and you might see that he follows a few people that you might recognize that are involved in this anti-grift rift right now on YouTube. And I think you'll know where he's getting at. I don't think this is genuine out of him. I think somebody everybody he's following right now is influence him to think that this is the way he needs to go, instead of just being true to himself and doing what he's been doing, which is fighting against greed in the video game industry. Because the same energy that he's using in order to rant against critical thinker and neurotic could be better spent on things like talking about what's been going on with Grand Theft Auto 6 right now. And that whole thing, which I'm pretty sure I would make a video about that too. But anyway, that's my thoughts. What are yours? Please leave your comments down below. Please like, subscribe, and take care of yourself and each other. And I will see you next time.